Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Welcome back, or welcome to Up My Hockey. So proud and happy to present today's guest is Andy Delmore, an ex-teammate of mine from the Mannheim Adler in the DEL, the top league in Germany. We played together for one season there, and Andy brings with him just a wealth of experience. 15 years pro, 283 regular season games in the NHL with the Flyers, the Predators, the Sabres, and the Blue Jackets. We talk about his junior career with North Bay Centennials and the Sarnia Sting, also his progression from the AHL into the NHL and into his first pro contract, and some of his successes, and like leading the league, the NHL, in goals as a defenseman, tied with Lidstrom and Gonchar in 02 and 03, to still holding his rookie record for a defenseman to score a hat trick in the NHL playoffs. From his time traded to Buffalo, where Andy really gets into the mental struggle he had dealing with that trade and trying to perform in that environment. And he just is real vulnerable and real open about his career, where he got to and where he's ended up now, which is as the assistant coach at the East Coast Hockey League level with Toledo. So this is a great interview. I really, really appreciate Andy spending some time with us here today. And once again, there's a lot of value for hockey players, either trying to get somewhere or trying to get to that next level, or for parents or fans that just want to know what it is like to try and play on the biggest stage. So without further ado, I bring you Andy Delmore. All right, we are live. Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin, and I'm here with Mr. Andy Delmore, and I'm smiling already because Andy and I have a little history. We go back to Mannheim in the DEL, where we were both single at the time, both in a new country, and we ended up being thick as thieves and ran around Mannheim like we owned the place. So we ended up connecting back at the NHL Coaches Conference, and we've been in touch ever since. But boy, life's go separate directions now. Now Andy's got a couple girls of his own. I have 3 boys, and we're definitely in different spots. But it's awesome to reconnect. So Andy, thanks so much for coming and sharing your experiences with us.
Thanks for having me. And it was great seeing you again at the Coaches Clinic. Reconnect, like you said, thick as thieves through lots of time there in Mannheim, finding ourselves and seeing what life was all about.
Yeah, no kidding. It's interesting, actually, because I was looking at your rap sheet here, meaning your hockey DB, right? Where you've been, what you've been up to. And even at the time, right? Like, I don't know, like I didn't really know much about your history, right? It seemed like wherever we landed, because you were on a lot of teams, I was on a lot of teams, you just sort of found somebody and you connected. And it wasn't like we went through old war stories about your time in the NHL or why you were in Mannheim or any of that stuff. We were just hanging out, kind of. Did you find that was sort of the way it was with you wherever you went?
I found out that year for sure because, it was the lockout. We were just kind of, as you know, through the regular season there, we weren't very good. Yeah. Like, we were an average team. We were just, living our lives, kind of seeing the world, taking trips, doing our things. So I guess once the playoffs hit that year, I guess that's when we hockey was finally important, I guess you could say. Not that we didn't care during the year. It just, we really ramped it up once the playoffs hit that year.
Yeah, it was a different feel over there. Maybe we'll get into that time in Europe and, why we ended up over there. Good hockey, but yeah, it's just sort of I think there's a different mindset about the hockey over there. At least there was for me when I was there. But let's get back into you. And as you know, we talked just briefly before we came on, just kind of about what this podcast is about. It's more about the journey. It's more about how you got to where you got to, the good and the bad, and now your experience as a coach. So we want to have the takeaways from this be, how do we become good at anything, right? And on this platform, this arena of hockey, where we got a lot of young kids that want to try and make to this place called the NHL. That seems like an awesome place to be, but there's a lot of hurdles along the way. There's a lot of speed bumps, and there's different ways to navigate it. And there's also many different paths. And what I like about you and where I want to start is in junior. And we'll get to your draft years. I think that's super compelling. But how did you even end up in the OHL?
I guess I played junior B as a 15, 16-year-old in Chatham, Ontario. So I actually moved away from home at that age. It was only an hour away, but without no driver's license yet. I actually had to move there. And then I actually got a little homesick, to be honest. So there was another kid on the team from LaSalle, Ontario, where I'm from, and he was driving. So I actually moved back home for second semester of school and just kind of did the commute that year. Like you said, it's hard at a young age to move, 15, no driver's license. You know, it can come at you pretty quick.
Sure.
So from there, I ended up getting drafted in the 5th round by the North Bay Centennials, which I didn't know much about, obviously being from Southern Ontario. And I had a real good summer camp, made the team that year, and it kind of just got rolling from there. I didn't have a great first year, didn't play that much, but you know, when you're practicing with better players, you eventually get up to speed.
Sure. Well, let's backtrack just a little bit to 15, because I think that's a big question mark for a lot of my listeners. Some guys are trying to get to they want to get to the NHL, but they got to play junior first, right? And how to navigate that. And parents are worried about, it wins too early or wins too young, and what about the billets? And just walk us through that a little bit. Like you said, 15 is young. You're away from home. You're amongst 19, 20-year-old men.
Yep, for sure.
And you're not with mom and dad anymore. Like, what is your memories of that? You said you were homesick. Like, how did you deal with that? And what were your takeaways from that experience?
Well, funny thing, my first billet there, super great people. They had 3 daughters in the house. So they all ate like little church mouses. There was no food in the house. So as a growing kid, it was the only reason I kind of left that billet, because I wasn't getting fed. Like, I can't have 3 pieces of broccoli and a bowl of soup. Like, it's the way it is. Mm-hmm. So I ended up moving in to another billet family there, and they actually had a 20-year-old goalie there. And these people, it was like buffet style at dinner. It was go time. So, I probably would have stayed if I would have been with those people the whole year, I think. But a lot of collect calls home, that's for sure. It was just, it was tough. It was a tough year. It's not easy being around 19 and 20-year-olds when you're 15. Schooling I was still trying to do good in school. Wasn't that great, but I was still trying. And, that's when life starts to change as a young man, 15, 16, girls come into play, especially being around 19, 20-year-olds, drinking comes into play. There's a lot of things that go on for sure.
Right.
But I probably would have stayed if I would have had that first or that second billet family. I probably would have stuck it out. But I think it was just it was the right decision to come home at that point.
Right.
I actually probably played a little bit better commuting. I was around my friends back home most of the time, and it was only an hour drive to practice and whatnot. But it wasn't easy. Right. That's for sure.
And now, because I'm getting that question asked to me quite often, parents, right? Should we go the junior B route? Should we play major midget? What's the best way? And I don't think that there is a blanket answer by any stretch of the imagination.
No chance, right?
But I do think, I don't. But I do think that age is a very, very big and important thing to consider, because midget, you are playing with kids your own age, right? Your own maturity level, into your own things, and kind of. I think the direction of those kids is important too, because everyone's still on the up. Everyone's still thinking they can go somewhere playing major.
For sure.
Junior B, sometimes that's not the case, as you know, right?
No.
You've got the 19, 20-year-olds. They're on the downward side. They know they're not going anywhere. Maybe not the best environment. So, in saying that, what was your takeaway? Would you do that again, or would you have gone a different direction?
No regrets. Honestly, I look back at my whole career. and I try and go with the no regret thing. I just don't have time to go back and try to think about what would I have changed. It's so far gone that I wouldn't have changed anything. Now, what I can say is, would I recommend it for somebody else? Like we're talking, I would. If you have a strong, mature 15-year-old that can handle himself and handle the pressure of being away, or handling 19, 20-year-old guys that are, I know there's not much bullying anymore, but as we all know, there is a little bit still.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be, go sit in the bathroom on the bus for a 3-hour trip, but there's other ways that these kids can still do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mental side of it. So you got to have a strong 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid that you believe that you've set on the right path, and can say no to people, because there's a lot of temptation, obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the maturity is, and that's the thing, it's just being aware enough of the kid, and the kid being aware enough himself to sort of figure out where they fit in that scheme. Because it's not easy to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm not mature enough for this, I'm not ready. So it does sometimes take an outsider perspective to, keep the kid's best interest at heart. The hockey is good, I think, and not all junior B leagues are created the same either. But the hockey, sure, you are going to be tested, right? There's stronger, bigger guys, and it's good hockey. So I agree with you. I don't think there's a right way, but I think the personality does matter. Let's get in. So you went from there. Obviously, had a good enough year to get that in, to get drafted, and then to get that to play as a 16-year-old. Then, right? Correct in the O.
No, I would have been 16 to start the year. Then I would have turned 17 at Christmas. So
Okay.
I was a 6. So I was not an underager at that point.
Right.
I know they're all underagers now when they get drafted. So, or in the Ontario League, they are. It's a little different out west.
Yeah.
With the Bantam draft, it's different in Ontario. So it'd be your minor midget year would be your draft year.
Gotcha. So you step in as a 17-year-old, and because of your late birthday, that was not your NHL draft year. So you had, so you had 1 year in the league, and then you would have the next year to be your draft year. So
yeah, exactly.
So that's another question too. I think we should touch on that for a moment, because people are saying, well, such and such team wants my kid in the WHL. I think he might be a third, fourth liner. Should we stay and, whatever, play major midget again or something, right? And be the guy. And I asked that question to Trevor Letowski, who we've had on earlier, and he was a big advocate of playing in the best league that you can, and he used London Knights as an example, right? He was like, these guys play in London. He's like, they're a hockey factory. They might not even see the ice their first year, but they're practicing. They're in that culture. They're in that organization. And the next year they come out and they're shining. So he suggested playing at the best level you can. And you seem to agree with that?
I do. I think practice time is obviously how you get better. We can get into the coaching side of it now, how I try and preach practice makes perfect, all those things. But I agree with Trevor. If you're not on the ice with the best players, getting that speed, watching them shoot pucks, stick handle, skating, I think you can take a lot just visually from watching certain players on the ice. And, especially when they're your teammates, you see them, for 8 months out of the year on the ice, and then, see how they are in games, see how they are off the ice. There's lots of positives to take away from it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to learn outside of actually being on the ice too, which I'm sure you can attest to, right? Like, how to even interact in that environment, and in some ways, again, depends on the athlete, but it takes a little bit of pressure off, because you are figuring all that stuff out that first year. And now you don't have to go out there and perform and worry if you're -2 or what the next shift looks like, right? Like it in some ways it's easier to manage. So, it's interesting, and you should assume that you're going to be getting better coaching at the higher level too.
You would assume. You would assume. I'm not going to say that it's always going to happen, but you would assume it's going to be better facilities. The gym at a lot of these major junior rinks are, so dialed in now with the weights, the bikes, strength coaches. They got lots of stuff there now where I don't know how you can go wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing that I've touched on that maybe doesn't get talked about enough is that relationship with the coach and your coaching staff. So to come in, like, to say in your scenario, if you didn't have that year where maybe you didn't play that much and you weren't in every game, and, the coaches are still watching you and they get to know you, right? And you're getting familiar with the league. And now you step into that year 2 and you're not a rookie, right? The coaches know you. You're not fighting for that, to be noticed. So I think that that in itself is another reason, I think, to get there. If that's where you think you're going to go, then get there as early as you can, I think.
I agree. I think there's nothing wrong with going that year. And as long as you have the right attitude, you're that first guy on the ice, last guy off attitude, you're going to get better. And the coaches are going to see that you are in it, to get better, which is huge.
Yeah, that's a big one. Some people really preach playing time. I mean, I love games. Kids love games. We all love playing the games. I mean, we didn't start playing hockey so we could go to practice. I don't pretend to say that's the end all and be all, but it is, I think, when you're really considering development, who are you surrounded by? How much are you practicing? How much access do you have to ice? And then the cherry on top is obviously getting the games, and you want to be on the PP, and you want to get your minutes. But I think that patience in the process is sometimes overlooked.
Parents don't have that, buddy. We all know that.
No, I know.
They spend $1,000 on the new Bauer or True skates, and they got all this stuff, and then their kid doesn't play as much as they think. It's not easy on them either, right?
Yeah, no, I know. And everyone has their self-motivated goals, obviously, right? That sometimes don't always go in with maybe the direction of the team. But so let's talk about your draft year. So now here you have you have an okay season. Your draft year looked like you were doing okay, I guess. Maybe not as well as you would have liked. I mean, it says 40 games. Were you hurt that year?
What was the 40 games? That's all.
That was when you got traded, or you moved that year.
Yeah. I got traded
94, 95.
I got traded from North Bay to Sarnia that year, right? Correct?
Yeah, yep.
So how many games was it in North Bay?
40 and 27 in Sarnia.
So now we're up to
67.
67.
That's a full,
it's a full season.
Yeah, pretty much.
Decent year. As you can see from the trade, I ended up getting a lot more power play time and things in Sarnia. I think the numbers are way different, to be honest, aren't they?
Well, yeah, same production and half the amount of games. So
yeah, I started to get her going there.
Yeah.
And great coaching staff there. Mark Hunter, as we all know, pretty much a junior hockey guy that just is, he just won the junior championship with Canada. He's a real solid coach and mentor, to be honest. Like he grinded me down pretty good to get her going.
Yeah.
Which was good though.
Yeah, sure. What was his approach?
The glass is your friend. Like,
can
you stop trying to do everything on your own? And, he just taught me basically the glass is your friend. Like, it's okay. You can just get the puck out and then defend. He was big on teaching me how to defend.
Right.
Tried to teach me how to fight. Didn't work. But real good guy. So that helped me along in that year. You want to know what? I was rated actually in the draft that year, I think 3rd round. And I think I probably told you the story where, when you're rated in the 3rd round, you're like, okay. And don't forget back then, how many rounds was there? 15?
Right. I don't know.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like 3rd round, like, fuck, I have to get drafted. Even if it's in round 10, like, all right, whatever. So me and my family fly out to Vancouver. The draft's in Edmonton. Drive from Van to Edmonton for the draft. I don't get drafted. Oh my good God. Like, what a crazy, crazy day. When you think your billets were bad in junior B, try that day.
Right.
And not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But, puts that chip on the shoulder, I guess, too, right?
What, I instantly think of Don Cherry when I hear that story, because he for years on Coach's Corner would have the kids on. He'd say, if you're not in the 1st round, don't go.
I know.
He's like, don't go. He's heard too many stories, and you're one of them, I guess, right? Because that's the thing, you just don't know, I guess, and that turned out to be
now. Like it's true. Like that was a tough day. Tough,
right.
And a lot of questions unanswered, right?
Yeah, because there's no one to ask.
No, nothing. You can't ask your mom and dad. They're going to tell you everything that you want to hear, but it's not what you want to hear.
Right. How did Mark help you with that, or through that, or did he?
Well, the next year, it was funny. John Ferguson, the late John Ferguson. You might know his son, John Ferguson Jr., who was the GM of the Leafs there for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually with the Ottawa Senators at that time. And he called me the next day after the draft and invited me to training camp. So he kind of, and he's a Windsor guy, hometown from where I'm at. So got a hold of me. So it took the sting away initially. So I guess I wasn't left unnoticed because I did get that phone call pretty quickly. But, as you know, going to a camp undrafted is way different than when you're drafted.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But,
it's different. It's different whether you're first round or a third round. It's different.
First to second. You can go by round if you want.
Yeah.
So, being undrafted, I guess you really had to go out there and, man, you had to work. Like, it was time to work. Summers, like, even shift to shift. There was no shifts off. Like, I had to go because I had to get noticed.
Right.
Had to.
So you then are now playing as an undrafted, I guess, free agent. Were you still eligible for the draft that second year, or was it?
Yeah.
You were. And you never got drafted again?
No.
That's insane, hey? Because you had good numbers that second year. I got that right. That'd be 95, 96 when you put up 59 points and 21 goals.
Yeah, that was a pretty legit year.
That's a really good year. You're not a small guy. Skated well. You had a great shot.
You thought maybe, but who knows? Maybe they didn't enter my name in there. I don't know what.
That's crazy. So that might, but you seem to sound like maybe getting passed over the second time wasn't as a big deal to you personally as the first time?
No, not even close. That first one killed me.
Right.
Second one, I hate not to say that you're used to it. That's not the right word, but you never, obviously you didn't go to the draft the second time.
Your expectations were different and lower. Were you not rated that second time as well?
I'm not even sure, to be honest. I'm not even sure.
So you go through some big adversity there. There'd be a million people probably saying, where do you think you're going, or what do you think you could do? I mean, whether you heard that publicly or not, but I mean, to not get, it's hard enough to make it when you're drafted. Yeah.
You want to know what? I went to another camp that year. I ended up going to St. Louis's camp. And I actually had a real good camp there. And they wanted me to go to Worcester out of camp. And I was like, how can I go to Worcester with no contract when I can go back and play my overage year? Like, I can't just go to Worcester. Like, it's kind of like that. At least that's what my agent was telling me. Right.
Right.
And now that I look back, yeah, sure. Like, why would I go there without a contract to try and get one, I guess? I figured I might as well go back to junior and have a great year and see what I can do from there.
Right. And that turned out to be okay because you had another good year. Now you're over a point a game as a D-man. Looks like you had a really solid year in Sarnia. And then you step out and you get, it was a pro contract? Was it a minor league deal with Philadelphia?
Yeah, no, it was a full NHL 3-year deal. So actually my D partner that year was a second round pick to Philly. This kid by the name of Shane Kenny. Just off the ice or off ice issues, just not, all the talent in the world, just couldn't put it together. So obviously Philly was at a lot of our games watching this guy, and he was my D partner. So I basically got his contract minus the bonus. Right. Basically. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. So that came quick at the end of the year. It was like, oh my God, it was something else, to be honest. You never would have thought of it, as we went through the rap sheet. Like, it wasn't expected. Wasn't expected. What you were hoping for, I guess, but not expected. And then it comes. And what was that feeling like? I knew it was time to even work harder, though. Like, it was a small goal of not being drafted was to get that contract. And then from there, I knew, I guess that was the time where I realized, okay, there is a chance. Right. Before I never thought there was. But when that contract got signed, I'm like, okay, there is a chance. Right. Yeah. That's an interesting mindset, right? Because I don't know what other guys would have done in your situation. Everyone's so different, but I guess you're in the OHL, so why wouldn't you come back for an overage year? Maybe some people might have chose another option or gone somewhere else. Yeah. You said you didn't really think there was a chance, but you had to have had some inner belief that there was a chance or that there was a future for you in hockey. After going to 2 training camps, Ottawa and St. Louis, I knew I could skate with them. Like, I knew I could skate with them, and I wasn't like, I was 6'1", 190 at that point, so I wasn't small. I was the average, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting hit. I wasn't getting banged. I was moving pucks, skating. I guess I needed the chance, and there wasn't going to be the chance without the contract, I guess.
Right.
I can't go to a third training camp as an invite and shock the world again. Like, it's just, you've been to camps in Toronto. The invites, they're fillers. They're spot, you know what I mean? They don't, they're not really watched as closely as you were the high draft pick guy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So you go to Philadelphia, and geez, that's quite a cool scenario there, because one, that was a big franchise at the time. Like, the Phantoms were always quite good.
Really good, yeah.
And it was cool that they were in the same city as the big club, which was super rare at the time, right? Because there was a lot of movement.
It was the first team, I believe.
Yeah, and which created so much movement. I remember watching that in St. John's, right, when I was with Toronto, and I mean, you couldn't be farther away, it felt like, from your big league team, right? Yeah, like, you had to have a flight, and like, there's no way you're having a game day call up, and all these scenarios, right? And then whereas I see these guys from Philly, they would go, if somebody would get hurt, they'd call a guy up. Maybe it was just for a game, but at least you're getting that cup of coffee, you're getting that experience.
I had to walk across the parking lot.
Right.
It was the old Spectrum, and then back there, whatever it is now, it was literally maybe 800 feet away through a parking lot. So, it could be at 2 p.m, and okay, here he comes. Like, there was plenty of those times as well.
It must have made everybody on that Phantom team feel more connected and closer to where they wanted to get to, wouldn't it?
You knew there was a chance. Obviously we all count the numbers when you're in the minors, how many D they got, who's hurt, you have to know.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of know where you're at in that situation, being in the minors, you're counting, I got to jump ahead of this guy. Like, it is what it is. You're trying to get to the NHL. You think of some weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, 100%. I mean, and we'll get into that maybe when we get into your coaching side, but that was always interesting. Like, playing on a professional team where people are paying money to watch you play, yet nobody really wants to be there. I mean, at the heart of it, because you want to be somewhere else. You want to be in the NHL, and that you're supposed to be striving in this team environment that's plays better as a team, but yet you are very worried about the individual side and who you're better than and who you're getting more ice time than. It's a super crazy environment.
I know. I was lucky my first year. We had an unbelievable team. My D partner that year, John Stevens, coached LA, super competitive, intense guy. I'm lucky I had him, because he kept me in my place where, we won the Calder Cup that year. So, like, he kept me in line of where the team goals will benefit you personally. And he taught me that early that year, not to worry about anything else but the team. And, the team, we did do great things. It was a great year, but there was a lot of guys from that team that made it the next year.
Right.
Mike Maniluk, Jim Montgomery. There's lots of guys that got, NHL one-ways from that team.
Right. So, I mean, proof's in the pudding, right? It's great when what somebody like a veteran like that's been around can preach it and it actually bears fruit. It's a heck of a lot easier to,
not like it's in year 5 when you're like, oh, I don't believe in the system. It's like, oh, well, okay, I see it.
Right.
I mean,
that's a hard trophy to win too.
Very tough.
Yeah. We got to the final and we lost. We lost to, who did we lose to? Chicago. So another perennial great franchise there. But yeah, I mean, that was a grind. I mean, that's a grind, and maybe even more so than the cup. I mean, I don't know. I never went on the cup grind, but like, you're in buses going back and forth, right? Through these game 7 battles.
Yeah, there was, I'm trying to think of who we played. It was the only team that ended up being far was the finals. St. John, New Brunswick was the finals, but obviously we ended up flying there. But other than that, it was pretty close but it still was, June, like it's a grind.
Yeah, it's a grind. Yeah, good for you to win that.
Thank you.
So you go into you go up to Philly, and like, man, like I looked at that team, man. That's a star-studded team. Like, we're talking legends, right? Like Lindros, Tokic, Brindamore, Recchi. Like, holy smokes! Like, what was?
Like, yeah, a ton of guys.
What was it like walking into that room?
Like, shooting on Ron Hextall, keep her down. Like, you can't be buzzing the tower there. You know what I mean?
Especially, and would he come at you?
You want to know what? It was funny. My first NHL game in Pittsburgh, he was the starting goalie. So we're doing the horseshoe at the end of practice or the end of warm up.
Yeah.
And I throw one high glove on him, just bar downed him. He comes in, he goes, and I thought I was dead. I'm going to be honest. He comes in, he goes, just make sure you shoot like that tonight. I was like, okay. It was pretty good. He was a good guy like that.
That's funny. You know what?
I didn't hit him.
Yeah, no kidding. First funny story is that's my only goal ever in the NHL was against Ron Hextall in
Amazing.
Philly. Yeah. So
I'm going to let him know.
Yeah, that's pretty. Oh, do you still know him?
No, but I'm going to send him. I'm going to send him a message.
And another funny goalie story. So when I came up to Spokane for my first ever game, had just turned 16 and was in Victoria. So we went to Victoria, met the team for the last 2 games of the regular season. And I'm in this room, obviously, like with all these, older guys. I mean, I'm like starstruck and nervous and all the rest of it. And I can't remember who it was. I wish that'd be an even better part of the story. But somebody before warm-up came over to me and told me that our goalie, Scott Bailey, he goes, he loves it when you shoot 5-hole. He goes, you got to shoot 5-hole on him. I had no clue, right? 16. So I come down, I shoot 5-hole. He kind of gives me a look. I come down again, shoot 5-hole, score. Third time, that was when we had the full ice warm-up in WHL. He legitimately chased me from his crease to the blue line with his stick. Full ice
warm-up?
You had full ice warm-up in junior. You never heard of that?
No.
Because there's too many scraps. Teams were stealing nets and stuff. Like some teams were so tough in the dub, like back in the day, that they would take the other team's net and warm up both their goalies, so the other team wouldn't have it.
You can't even share out there, right? Like you can't share.
I know we had bad habits.
Like linesmen on the ice, nothing.
No, they wouldn't bring a linesman out. It was so ridiculous because if you're on the road, Delhi, like you had your whole 20-minute warm up before their whole 20-minute warm up.
Yeah.
So your warm up, like you were stone cold by the time the game started, because it started like you were 45 minutes before the game started. Your warm up, it was ridiculous.
One of the weirdest things I've heard.
Yeah, no, that was going on for a while. I think it's back to half ice now. But anyways, yeah. So Scott Bailey chased me to the blue line like he was going to kill me because one of the veterans told me to shoot 5-hole on him. But what was it like though back in that team? So in Philly, right? So you got Lindros, you got Taka, you got Recchi. Like, what is your memory of that room, and like who just had the presence for you?
I didn't say a word. I literally sat there and didn't say much, honestly. I'm trying to think. Obviously, Lindros, the presence, like that was his nickname, the presence. Like,
really?
Like he's that big and that like people but he was a great guy. People, all the stories and you hear in the media, he's a good person. And, Mark Recchi, phenomenal. Rick Tocchet, before the game, telling me to go run, guys, because I got your back. Like, okay. Like Luke Richardson, my D partner, like he was begging for me to slash somebody because he could just jump in and grab him. Like it made my life a lot easier. And I think we won the Eastern Conference that year. So like that was a good hockey team.
Yeah, really good hockey team. I was looking at that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was looking at those names, and I mean, I've done some looking up on Sidney Crosby and like what an influence Mark Recchi was for him, just from a leadership standpoint, and like what an influence he was. Like, you talk about presences and good guys, but was there somebody in there that you were just like at least drawn to in the sense of like, man, this guy's got to figure it out, or this is how I want to be, or this is who I should emulate?
Mark Recchi as a forward, I guess that's who I looked like. That's who I watched a lot in practice, just how he did things. And then Luke Richardson, just as my D partner, just a mentor, with his wife and his kids. He was just a guy that, took care of me off the ice, always invited me over. And, beginning of training camp, don't stay in the hotel, come stay at my house. Like that type of guy like that. He took care of me in a lot of ways.
Did he walk you through, like, I don't know, the nuances of the game and like, the tricks of the trade, or was it more just kind of being a friend and giving you an outlet and someone to hang with?
He was real good. Even when things weren't going well, he was so level-headed where you didn't even have to vent to him, because he went through a tough time in Philly as well. And I think he just liked not talking about hockey sometimes. He was into motorcycles and he was into this, and, just not talking about hockey sometimes with him just took your mind off of things.
Yeah.
Good or bad, right?
I think that was the way a lot of guys dealt with it. In my experience, at least in the
Yeah,
locker room, like a lot of guys, when you weren't there, you were talking about something completely different, non-related.
for
Um,
sure.
and I think that there is value in that. I just find that weird now, or strange looking back, because, as a young guy, boy, like there were questions and there could have been questions, right? And there
Yeah,
could have
for
been stuff to
sure.
talk about, like with whatever it is. But I don't know. It just seems like the conversations never went there, which, I mean, good, bad, or indifferent. I just see, I go watch a lot of baseball, and it seems like the pitchers are always dealing with the young guys and how to hold the curveball and what do you try
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I don't remember a hockey locker room really being like that,
Uh, no, maybe a little bit during the game on the bench, you would say.
Mhm.
Like, hey, I was open over there, take a look, or throw a stick fake there and then turn this way. It's a little bit more during the game, I would say,
Right.
than
Yeah.
after, because
Yeah.
hockey's so quick. Hey, you can't really remember. Like, hey, remember that time in the second when that guy was forechecking? Why didn't you I was getting forechecked all game. I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
No, good point. Did that influence of Luke, feeling that mentor role, which is huge for a lot of guys. And, I talk about it all the time, what a massively powerful influence that can be. Did that help shape you, like later on when you were more in a veteran position, that, hey, there's somebody I should reach out to here, or make it a point to be that for somebody else?
I think I just took it upon. I think my last couple of years when I was over in Italy, I found a way to kind of relate to the young guys, uh, and I would draw back experiences from Luke. Just even like you said, having a guy over for dinner means a lot.
Yeah.
Like, so there'd be times there where I just invite some of the young guys over, or just any of the guys, and just have them at your house or wherever you're staying, cook dinner. Obviously a few beers, some wine, whatever. But it was, I think that's the one thing I drew from it the most, was just allowing people into your life um, off the ice.
Right.
It's funny how they'll treat you at the rink.
Yeah.
During a game. I think it's very valuable to have that friendship, and that's how I guess you build a really good team, to be honest.
Yeah. It is the relationships, right? We talk about relationships all the time on here.
Yeah.
And again, it's oftentimes not about hockey, right? But it is relationship based, right? As guys, you care about guys, right? You care guys more about more than just the number on their back, right? And trying to get
For
that
sure.
win.
For sure.
So with that, I mean, I do want to touch a little bit more on that year, because you went to Game 7, I believe, if I did my data right, against the Devils, who went on to win the cup in the next round. You took out Pittsburgh the year before. I mean, the round before, and at the time, you might know this better than me, but you had a hat trick, and then you were the first NHL rookie defenseman to have a hat trick in the NHL playoffs. How cool is that? And does that still stand?
It still stands. My dad tells me every July when the playoffs are done that it's still going. You want to know what? When I look back now, obviously then you were on cloud nine. What, you just got a hat trick in the playoffs? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But now I look back, and I say, what a day! Like that. Like, how does that happen? Like, to get three, not one, not two. And I watch it now. Some fan posted it on YouTube, and I'm like, I think I have the most views, I would assume. But it was really cool. And I go back and think about it. And I'm like, how lucky was I? I honestly, how lucky, not just to make it, play some games, but to have a record in the NHL. Like, that's mind-boggling to me now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super
Crazy.
cool.
Crazy.
And against a good squad. Yeah, I mean, everything about it, right? I mean, like, it's just like you're chasing that holy grail. You're against an amazing team. I mean, you're with an amazing team. Like, I even looked at the stats that year, and you tied for second on the team in playoff goals that year with the likes of Lindros and Leclerc, and I mean, all these names, right? And there's Andy Delmore, and obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but not as recognizable at the end of the day. But I mean,
Not
you
even
had
close.
but that was your moment, right? And then
I was.
and I also saw that overtime winner, right? An overtime winner in that playoffs.
That was actually 2 games before. I'll honestly say that was the biggest goal I've ever scored in my life. The overtime winner. We were down 2-0. First 2 games at home to Pitt, we lose. So now we're going to Pitt for 2, down 0-2. score in game 3 to make it the series 2-1 instead of 3-0.
Yeah. Now you have a chance.
It's the biggest goal I ever scored.
Yeah.
By far. Not even close.
Describe it.
Describe it. Keith Jones carrying the puck up the right side of the ice. I can't remember who I beat up the ice. I don't want to sue anybody either. They were tired.
Yeah.
So I jumped up, and if you talk to Keith, he said he could hear me from a mile away yelling for the puck. He threw it across a kind of high slot. I take it on the backhand. It was out in front of me as a righty, and just basically flipped around it and just shoveled it top shelf. I didn't really snap it. I just took it on the backhand, worked my body around it, and somehow got it up high enough on tug nut over the glove.
That's awesome. So it was a 2-on-1 then? You made it a 2-on-1 by joining the rush?
I did make it a 2-on-1, and actually I got it away so quick that the D-man really didn't have a chance to come over on me.
Right.
Because I knew he was coming, and I knew I just had to hit the net. I wasn't aiming. I wasn't going high glove.
Right.
I just said, okay, if this hits my stick, it's going to be off as fast as it can.
Yeah.
Sure enough, just happened to go where it was supposed to.
How great is that?
Yeah, it was a cool moment.
Oh, very awesome. Cool. So how do you end up in Nashville? And I mean, and we'll touch on Nashville quickly here, and the success you had there. But what was it? Just the end of your contract, and Philly didn't want to renew, or what went on?
No, they had some young guys coming in, likes of Kim Janssen. I don't know if you remember him. Played for the Rangers as well. They had him come in, free agent. Just some young kids coming in, and just felt I was expendable. I would assume.
Right.
Obviously leaving Philly, arguably one of the best hockey markets in the U.S., going to a young franchise in Nashville. It wasn't like it is now, that's for sure. We weren't very good, and the crowd was okay. But it was a little bit of a shock, But I guess funny thing is, being traded in junior kind of set me up for it. It's never easy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe you can expand on that just a little bit, because I had Brad Larson on here. I've told my story a little bit with the different teams that I was on, like from the difference to me being with a team like, let's even say Toronto, which is a huge hockey market, which is
the biggest one in the world.
Yeah, but they were terrible when I was there. Right, it was just before they started making the playoffs again. So they had missed the playoffs 5 years in a row. Like the way that felt there compared to like going to Detroit, for instance.
Yeah.
For camp was like night and day. Same thing with the Kings, right? And I'm sure you can speak to that a little bit. Like you said, being in something that is as storied as the Flyers, coming off a successful run, right? Good team. Now you're going to a place that's just essentially trying to figure it out.
If you look at my numbers, I actually excelled in that situation in Nashville because there was no pressure. I could just go do my thing. We weren't expected to win. Weren't expected to make the playoffs. Just give an honest effort every night. And you kind of have to, let the chips fall where they may, because we weren't that good. I think our salary was equal to Lindros and Recky's contracts. Like that was our whole team. You know what I mean? We didn't have much going on there. We did have a great coach in Barry Trotz, who's done obviously remarkable things, but we weren't expected to do much. And I just excelled in that non-pressure cooker situation.
Right. What do you think about that worked for you? Like, I know you're saying the pressure, but like, how did that, do you think that changed you as a player on the ice?
Just more free, just wasn't thinking, just letting my reactions take over. I got into a great rhythm, a good routine. Obviously I was pretty finicky with some things before the game. It just got rolling, and almost felt like every shot I'd take was going in, or, every play I made was the right one.
Right.
Some days you just get that going, and it's hard to stop.
Yeah, no, especially when you get on a roll. I mean, in my research here, you went 16 goals, 18 goals, which are big numbers for defensemen in any era. That one year, though, in 02-03, 18 goals was tied for the NHL league lead. And I'm going to throw two names out there. I'm sure you know them, but our listeners are going to swallow their own tongues. Gonchar and Lidstrom. So Andy Delmore ties the NHL league for goals scored with Gonchar and Lidstrom with 18 in the 02-03 season. Like, how cool is that?
I wish that my kids knew who Lidstrom and Gonchar were.
Well, they're legends. I mean, one of them might be one of the best defensemen, second best defenseman probably to ever play. I never saw Bobby Orr, but I hear that he was ridiculous. And he was definitely the best of our era, without question.
It's not
and Gonchar, he just went into the Hall of Fame, didn't he?
If not, he should be.
Yeah, I think he just went in, or he got nominated or something. And there was, So, I mean, regardless, two huge names. And like you said, I mean, that's no small feat, so good on you for that. And like, how does that turn into, I want to talk about that, how that turns into 37 games played and 2 goals in Buffalo. How do you think that whole thing turns out the way it did?
Not feeling free, honestly, not new team. Just getting to know the guys was a little tough. Coach, I wouldn't say loved my defensive game there. Not that I think it was horrible. It wasn't horrible. I was in the NHL. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't where he wanted it to be. And then I think I talked to you this summer. That's kind of when some anxiety and stress came into play. And it just, I didn't know much about it then. And I was putting pressure on myself. I had a new contract. It was not a great year.
Right.
No, not good at all.
Yeah, that's tough. Environment means a lot. And maybe we'll get into the coaching aspect. You said you had Barry in Nashville. You had Lindy Ruff in Buffalo, who I had in Florida, and who's now an assistant coach with the Rangers with a good buddy of mine, Dave Oliver, who's also assistant coach there. So, I mean, Lindy's been around for a long time, and everyone has their guys and their way of doing things, and that's sort of an interesting thing. But can you walk us through, because that is so compelling to me, Delly, like tying Lidstrom for goals. It was a free agent signing then by Buffalo. Is that what happened?
No, that was a trade. So after the 16 goal season, I ended up getting a good 2-year deal from Nashville. So once again, Nashville, I don't know why people get traded. It is what it is. I can't explain it, right?
Yeah.
So I go to Buffalo, and so I'm on expiring my last year of that deal.
1-year deal. I mean, one-way deal, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So good one-way deal. You're on your last year of that. Buffalo trades for you, so they want you.
Yes.
Right? Which is interesting.
Their power play was not great, which I don't know how with the likes of Danny Briere, Chris Drury. Like, there were some good players there still.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't click. It just didn't happen. I was fighting it. I was kind of – it's funny. People don't realize Kimmo Timonen, how great of a hockey player he was in Nashville. I know he had moved to Philly after Chicago, but in Nashville, lights out, one of the best power play guys, feeding pucks. He's unreal.
Right.
Amazing. Then you go to a new team, you got different guys. It just didn't work out.
Right. Right. So you're saying that that's a pat in the back for Kimmo, to saying, your success, you can say thank you to him for some of it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. We don't do anything out there by ourselves. That's for sure. And we do get a partner or a line combination or whatever. I remember sometimes I would just love some of the centermans I had, right? We just worked together. It just was better for whatever reason. Not because somebody was a better player per se than somebody else.
Nothing to do with anything like that. It's just you got the mojo going together, and like we talked about on the bench, you're always talking, figuring it out, or even sometimes you're not talking. You just know where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Danny's been a guest of the podcast, and what an awesome interview we had. And he talked of his time there. Was he wearing the C at the time? Was he sharing it with Drury when you were there? Because there was a co-captaincy there at one time.
I'd have to think. No, I think it was, who was it? James Patrick, Alexei Zhitnik, Miroslav Shatan.
Miro Satan had a letter?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, wow. That surprises me.
Yeah, but that was the year that Drury got traded there. I think it was in the process. That was the year of kind of the changeover of the leadership group, I guess you could say.
Gotcha. Because Buffalo went on, not too long after, to actually have a couple of real good runs there.
Yeah,
so, things got turned around pretty quickly. And Danny talked about that and how he really ended up that was what he remembers most fondly almost is some of those runs with that team, like
with the
just how
Buffalo team.
how tight they got and how far they went and what they were able to accomplish together. And that was really cool to listen to speak about that. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat this thing to death, but this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? But this is what like essentially my mission is like that it's hard, right? And you can go from up here, cloud 9, to down here, and it's like, and then what? Like, how do we deal with that? Like, what did you? With it? Yeah, what did you learn?
I learned a lot. I didn't. No, I guess I was educated. I didn't learn. I educated myself.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I wish I would have learned more.
Yeah.
I guess I got an education for later on in life on how to deal with certain situations. It's not easy. You know what I mean? We talk about it all the time. It's not easy making. It's not easy, getting. It's just not an easy league to be in. And like I said, the anxiety and the stress kind of crept up on me and got me a little bit where I wasn't in a great state of mind to even be playing. I wasn't good. Yeah. You know what I mean? So when they put me on waivers and sent me down to Rochester, I wasn't surprised. I was like, you're right. Like, I'm not playing well. Went to Roch, did okay. I kind of felt a little bit better there, I guess. Randy Cunnerworth, Doug Huda, 2 great guys, kind of accepted me. And I wasn't there too long before I got traded to Boston, but I just wasn't in a great place mentally.
Right. If you could grab Andy, like, how old were you in Buffalo there? Do you know?
20. It was a year before Mannheim, bud.
Okay. So you were 28, looks like, maybe.
No, less than that.
04, you were born in 76. Oh, 6. Yeah. Okay. Right. So what would you say? What would you say to Andy, like now, like if you could go back there and say, in those first month or whatever, like what would you talk about?
I think I'd go right into Lindy Ruff's office and sit down and have a real man-to-man conversation, to be honest, and figure it out.
Right.
That would it would have helped a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I would have told him how I was feeling with some of the anxiety and the stress. He would have understood me more. We could have worked on it together, and as a group, as a team, organization, we could have figured out how to get me better. And honestly, I think that's all it would have taken.
Yeah. That's really interesting insight. Do you feel that you kind of bore that yourself? Like you didn't want to feel broken or talk like you were broken to somehow protect who you were?
Nobody does. Well, maybe they do now with all the things that have come out with the mental health and, a lot of the issues that's going on. At that point, nobody wanted to talk about it.
Right.
You know that. You played with Wade Belak. You played with a lot of guys. Like, nobody talked about it.
Yeah.
Sad, but true. Like, it just didn't happen.
Yeah. I do think and it's not even necessarily like getting into, the depths of depression or anxiety, like not even talking about that level of mental health. But I just think that like what I like to celebrate now is that the emotion, like whatever that emotion is, it exists. Just because you're a hockey player doesn't mean that you don't experience anxiety or sadness or any of these things, right? But we're so conditioned from such a young age to be this gladiator warrior mindset that if you do feel those things, like you're trying not to feel it. You don't want to feel it. You don't want to acknowledge it.
You're wondering why it's happening to you.
Right. And the last thing you want to do is tell somebody else about it.
For sure.
So I think now, like, I do think it's a way healthier spot because if we can be vulnerable enough to be able to say, hey man, struggling right now, don't want to be, but
somehow
I am.
I am.
Yeah. And I'd love to have some help here. And I think the game is changing, rightfully so. And I don't know how you feel. Maybe that is a good segue into your role now as a coach. Like, I think there's a place for a coach and a mentor in the mental health game that doesn't have to be somebody that's a PhD or a sports psychologist or somebody like that. Like, do you feel that there's a spot there to help some guys through some stuff?
Well, I can give you a small example of a player that we had 2 years ago who came into my office crying one time. And I was like, why are you crying? He basically said, I'm not feeling good. I'm having a tough time. I'm like, well, okay. So I kind of told him my experience of how in Buffalo I wasn't feeling good. And luckily enough, our team now we have a lady that you can go talk to. But I think me telling him that I'd gone through it as well, you're going to be okay. It happens to everybody, not just non-hockey players. I think it helped him go, oh, okay. And he kind of opened up about why his girl, just some things. And I think it helps when you hear it from somebody like we talked about. It's like the whole Bell Let's Talk thing. Let's just talk about it. Let's get it out. And it, like you said, it doesn't have to be to the point of suicidal or the real major depression. Anxiety and depression, they're kind of, they coincide, obviously, but it could be very little for a hockey player with the stress and the anxiety to throw you off your game.
Yeah.
So why not? Let's be 100% mentally dialed in for the game.
Yeah.
As we all know, that's a lot of hockey too, right? So, it's a small thing that I think is obviously we're getting way better at it for sure, is talking about it and helping the kids get through it. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I mean, the other thing is too, and that's what I'm talking about when even with the people that I'm working with, the players that I'm working with now and like their teens and stuff, is like understanding that those emotions, are there, and we need to learn how to manage them, right? Because not only is it for a mental health and just like life, right? Being able to manage life, but it's also a high performance habit, right? I mean, like you said, you cannot play well, anxious, depressed, squeezing your stick too hard, right? Like all these things is like, that's not going to let you be your best player. So why don't we start talking about that kind of stuff before you're in the throes of it?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can't prepare for the storm when you're in the storm.
It's impossible. It's
really hard, right? It makes it worse. So I think that those conversations, like you say, like the let's talk and like, and as a coach, I mean, that's one thing I'm doing with 10-year-olds now is like, I don't think there's any difference between dealing with a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old. Like that environment needs to be safe.
It needs to be safe. They need to have fun, as we always talk about.
Yeah.
And enjoy what they're doing.
100%. And if you don't have an outlet for like feeling embarrassed because you can't do something right or making a mistake on the ice, or, I mean, if that's not okay, then all of a sudden that's not a safe place. And in a professional level, like it's even worse because now you're coming down on yourself. So whether that is a professional, like a sports psychologist, or whether that is Andy Delmore, who's the bench guy for the D-men and number 6 feels comfortable coming and talking to you, that person, that player needs somebody. And I'm a pretty staunch believer in that.
Yeah. We got to make it fun. You know what I mean? Especially like you said, with the 10-year-olds and whatnot, having fun, being their outlet, being a mentor, especially with the amount of, stuff that you've done in your life, hockey, life, we got to teach the young kids. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. And that emotional management is a big part of that, which I have made synonymous with mental toughness. I think, mental toughness kind of back in our age was, essentially not having any of these weak emotions. If you're mentally tough, you just didn't feel pain, sorrow.
You'd play the next day after concussion. That's mentally tough.
Right. You know what I mean? So you rock and roll that way. And I think now it was what I'm talking about. Mentally tough is just being able to understand your emotions and manage them.
Not too high, not too low. Right.
Yeah. Being able to ride that out. What do you see now in your role as the assistant coach you're with Toledo, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So assistant coach with Toledo, East Coast Hockey League franchise. First of all, actually, maybe tell me what you think the mindset is of your average player in the East Coast League. Like they're there doing what do they want to do? What are their goals and dreams?
They all want to play in the NHL.
Every one of them.
All do. I would assume so. You might get the odd one that doesn't, but if you look at the numbers these days, the amount of guys from the ECHL that make it the NHL, they're rising. They're rising quickly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams are putting their resources to not just their AAA team, but now their AA team, which would be our league.
Yeah.
A lot of contracted players in our league. That's NHL and AHL contracts. So they're investing in this bigger pool of players that have the chance to make it.
Yeah. And they do make it, like you said.
They do. I was just looking at my phone this morning. Goalie, Latvian kid Vicious. I can't even say his name. Played in Kalamazoo last year. Started for Columbus last night. Like, it happens quick.
Yeah, that's super cool.
That's 1 year's time, and he's gone from the ECHL to an NHL start. Right. Goalies are a little bit different because there's only 6 of them within an organization, but it can happen still.
Yeah. I just saw on my Facebook feed yesterday that Glenn Metropolit was inducted into the East Coast Hockey League Hall of Fame.
Last night.
And anyways, I remember him in the NHL. I remember playing against him in the AHL. And I mean, again, at that time, there wasn't as many guys that would make that jump. And I never experienced East Coast Hockey myself, but I find that compelling because, and it makes sense to me now, really actually understanding the development curve of guys that is different. And not everybody is where they're going to end up at 21 or 20, right? Nope. And if that's where you go, or maybe the depth chart depends on the organization. Like, there's so many factors involved there, and that league's the real deal now. I mean, it's not a slap shot type league anymore.
No, not. We still. I will say this: there still is some fights, but it's not like it used to be. There's some real good hockey players. Obviously, the coaching staff in Toledo, I'm being a little bit pump the tires. We try and do everything we can, from video. We try and make it as good as we can for these players. We're mimicking the Red Wings or Grand Rapids. We want to have them ready to, when they do get called up, to succeed. Right.
That's awesome. Do you you're in it now? Do you have personal goals, dreams within the coaching realm? Is this something that you see yourself doing for a while?
You want to know what? I have 2 young kids, and like you said, me and you, we moved around quite a bit. And I enjoy being at home right now, coaching in Toledo. I do have a little bit of a commute, but obviously one day I'd love to take this as far as I can, but I have other people involved now that I have to take care of.
Right.
So I'd love to be an NHL coach, but I have to take care of some other people as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's a really hard, decision. I think it is a decision and it's a choice, right? Even with what I'm doing right now, it's hard even being around one of my sons and not the other 2 as much, and I could imagine if I was riding a WHL bus and, leading the Spokane Chiefs, let's say, and my kids are at home and I don't know what they're doing. And, it's, I don't think there's a right or wrong. Again, it's completely individual, but at this point, I love where I'm at. I love being around my kids and, there's lots of life left. So who knows, where all that goes. With you and in your role now as coach, like what do you feel you can provide these guys, or how do you go about your business with, I mean, you're in the development business, really. I mean, that's, you still want to win. You're a pro team, but you are developing players, I guess, at the end of the day. Would that be what you would describe yourself as doing?
I'm trying to help these players achieve their goals, basically. If it's to get an NHL deal, to get better in hockey, just if they get a good job in Europe, they make it to the A. Everybody has different expectations and different leveling points, but I have to help them. That's my job. I got to help them. Bottom line. Yeah. That's through great communication, being their friend. I'm not a guy that's going to bench you all too often because I don't have time for that. If you're going to make the same mistake again, you might not play the next game because, we are in the business of winning as well. But I really think just through all the, we talked about 3 or 4 years of my career, there was 15 of them there. Yeah. So, there was a lot of hockey and a lot of experiences that I love to share and love to teach. And I think me and you talked about this off the air was, I'm still able to skate and kind of show them what to do, which I think is huge. I think if they see me, they see some footwork, maybe some stick detail, how to jam a guy up in front of the net, or, the whole stick on puck thing. Well, there's different ways to do the stick on puck too, right? So I think the fact that I can still kind of do it and they can visually see it is one thing I'm really good at as well.
Right. No, that's great.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, every personality is different. And when I'm talking with these kids on an individual level, I mean, some are shy, some are outgoing. It's just like a locker room, right? It's anywhere.
Sure.
You have all walks of life that are going to be in a hockey dressing room. Let's assume that they do all want to get better and they all want to develop. Do you as a coach now recognize that, I think this guy wants to get somewhere, but he's not coming to me he's not asking me for extra stuff. Like, do you go out of your way to try and push that? Or are you waiting for some guys to come to you and say, hey man, I want to get better?
You want to know what? We're lucky enough in our organization. We did this predictive index test, which basically a personality test. So before even the season starts, I have a little bit of an in on what these guys are like. There's about 11 different categories they can fall into. And it just shows, some guys need love. They don't want to be yelled at. So there's all different ways that we're able to have now to get to know them. Obviously I think a lot of the kids that are on NHL and AHL contracts, they're the first on the ice 90% of the time. Obviously some of the ECHL contracts, they don't have the strive sometimes. But it's okay. It's not a negative. It's them still loving the game. They know they might only have a few years left. So you'd be surprised how much they give her during the games. Because they know they're running on board. Like, they don't have a lot of time left in it.
Yeah.
So it's a real interesting facet at our level where there's so many different contracts and so many guys. They're all there because they love the game. But some of them love the game because it's hopefully going to take them somewhere farther.
Right. Yeah. And there's a different level of commitment, different level of
sure.
want.
Yeah.
How much influence, and this is something I don't want to bias your answer, but in the AHL, in the CHL, I took for granted, I think, the amount of influence the coach has on your next step. Whereas I thought, okay, I'm going to be in the AHL here as long as I'm producing, right? As long as I'm scoring goals, things are going to take care of themselves, right? And I don't mean that I was rude to my coach or I was anything. I was respectful, whatever, but I never did anything necessarily to cultivate that relationship. Like to let him know what I wanted or to be however you want to phrase that. But does your head coach or you ever get questions from whether it's the guy in the A or whether it's somebody on the big club? Like, what's this guy like? What how does he tick?
No, they want to just know, how's he doing? Is he getting better?
Right. Okay.
Is he getting better? Can he play at the next level?
Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest question we get.
Okay, but that's a big question.
Yeah, that's all they want to know.
Yeah, and that I guess is what really my question was. And so if you have a guy that's coming to you, and I'm just trying to paint the story for these young guys listening, right? If you have somebody that's coming to you and he wants to work with you before practice and you're working on retrievals or whatever the case may be, you're watching this guy, you know what type of dedication he has. And when that phone rings, you're like, yeah, he's getting better. I'm working with him every day. This guy has a desire. He wants to play, that message goes a long way. Don't you think?
The message goes a long way, but his play improves as well.
Right.
It's not a joke. Like, I don't just, he's a hard worker. He comes out early. We've had guys do that aren't that good. They don't get it. But I guarantee 90% of the guys that are out there working on things, they're getting better. It's impossible not to. So, just for the listeners, like, as me and you, I remember in Mannheim, me and you were the first guys out there and the last guys off on a consistent basis. With Cristobal Huet shooting pucks and we were out there for a long time.
Yeah.
And, we were into our 30s or late 20s at that point.
Yeah.
And we were still wanting to get better. I think that's sometimes it's inside you a little bit, but you got to have that will to get better every day.
Yeah. And I think that is something that, because we're not, you don't have the highest motivation every single day. It's not like we always wake up. And I think that's where a good support team comes into. I think that's where I feel my job, at least as a coach, if I can recognize maybe somebody's having an off day and I don't make it feel like he's a bad guy because of it, but I try and do my best to bring him up, and get him going.
Yeah.
Really interesting. You know what, Cristobal, gosh, could we spend maybe 2 minutes on this guy? Just because my memory of him, Cristobal Huet, for those listening, was in the NHL for a while, played for Montreal, which is where I think he had his his
LA.
best.
Remember he started in LA.
Yeah.
And then he ended up, I don't know if he got traded to Montreal or unrestricted free agent, but he got a bank load.
Yeah.
In Montreal.
And played well there, though. I mean, he played well. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, for those who listen, so he comes over during the lockout year and he plays with us in Mannheim. And like just an absolute top shelf dude. Like I love this guy. But for an NHL player to come over to in the lockout, and you might have, I don't know, I just had kind of a notion like these guys they're kind of on vacation. They're still getting their, they're getting paid and they're keeping themselves mobile, but they're not here to win a championship. Let's say, this isn't make or break for them. Cristobal Huet played every practice, every second he was on the ice, like it was Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. I just never experienced that before to this date still, like that level of intensity in any position. Do you remember that from him?
I just remember he would be like, we'd go out for lunch after and he'd be mad that we scored on him. Like he's still at practice. It's like, hey, let it go. We're at lunch now. Like, he'd still be mad. Yeah. Like, and he'd be trying to figure out how he was a goalie, just so everybody knows. But he just couldn't, he did not like getting scored on. Like he hated it. Hated it.
Yeah. And that's one thing. I mean, and boy, did that make us better. Like actually, he crushed my confidence a little bit because I had the hardest time scoring on him. I'm talking an entire practice. I would maybe go without scoring on him.
You got to buzz the power on him quick. Let him know.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. But yeah, I mean, that did make, whatever it did for my confidence, I think that makes a team better when you have somebody showing that type of an example and that type of leadership. Especially as a goaltender position. I got a lot of goaltenders that listen to this. Like, my gosh, you can make your team so much better if you come with that type of mindset to a practice. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, that was a real interesting year, that lockout year. And I know that look at this. We've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, Deli, and that's the way it goes every time. Yeah. I know there was a ton of stuff here that, we could go through, Hamburg and back to Chicago, back to the NHL with Columbus after Mannheim. And you went over to Italy, and there's so much that we could touch on, but I think we covered a lot, and sure. And I know you got to get to practice, and I really appreciate you, spending the time with me. But if there was one thing you want to leave us with, if there's like one piece of advice you could give to, let's say, a Bantam hockey player or a midget hockey player out there that wants to get to the NHL, what would you say to him?
Every shift, don't take a shift off. Just go out there and have fun and work and enjoy the game, but work as hard as you can, because you don't know. And you could use my hockey DB, go back and look. You just don't know sometimes when it's going to happen. Right.
Yeah, that's a great way to leave it. My first interview here was with Kevin Peterson, who's a Western scout for the Arizona Coyotes. And he touched on that, just saying from the scout perspective, right? Like how important consistency is, because he's like, I got so many guys to watch. And he's like, I might see you for 5-6 shifts. So if those aren't great shifts, I don't know the difference, and I'm on to somebody else.
I might flip a page on you.
Yeah, well, 100%, sure. Right? Yeah. So anyways, that's just really interesting. One, because it's about character and it's about who you are and what your identity wants to be, how people remember you. And two, you never know when that opportunity's there.
You don't know.
You never
know who's watching. You don't know. You don't know who's calling your coach to ask questions about you. You just be a good person, be a great teammate, and enjoy the rink.
Love it. I love it, Andy. So much good stuff there. Really, really want to thank you for coming on. And
appreciate it.
Is there any place, like, I know you're probably not really into the social media side, but if somebody wanted to follow you, is there any place that they can find you?
They can go Instagram, Deli Llama, DELLYLAMA. And I believe it's at, I don't know my Twitter handle anymore. I'm very rarely on it.
Okay. Well, if you want to find Ed Deli, then he's on Instagram. His wife's super active on there, and she has a good account to follow too, and in the photography business. And just want to wish you the best of luck the rest of the year.
Thanks, buddy. All the best to all your boys and all their tournaments and backyard skating. It's you're doing awesome, buddy. It was great to reconnect with you for sure.
Awesome, partner. Have a good one.
Man. Thanks, Podsy. See you, buddy.
Thank you so much for being with us today. That interview brought a smile to my face, and it does even when I listen to it here again. Andy's a real good dude. He cares. He's an authentic guy that cares about the people that he's around and cares about the people that he works with. And that he was so gracious today to spend that much time and to be so vulnerable and open with his own story there, especially his time in Buffalo. That is such a compelling part of his story, to go from being tied for the league lead in defenseman score in the NHL to finding his way into the minors the very next year, and his personal struggle with that is not something that's rare, right? That's the thing that we have to understand, is that there is adversity in this sport, and there's things that happen, and there's real deal issues that happen between your ears, and how we deal with that and how we choose to deal with that, and whether we have the skill set to deal with those things are all very relevant. And just the fact that we're talking about things like that make it that much easier for those of you listening to the podcast, whether you're hockey players or whether you're just out there doing your thing in the world, is that these emotions exist, and there is ways to deal with them, and there's other people that are going through the exact same thing. So I really enjoyed the conversation today. Andy had so many good things to say, and once again, if you guys are enjoying the content here, please reach out. Andy, I'm sure would love to hear from you. Let him know on social media. He's at Delly Lama, as he said there at the end of the interview, DELLY LAMA. Let him know what you thought of the episode. Let me know, and share and subscribe and like. Let's keep this podcast growing. It's awesome to see new listeners every week, and to see the repeat listeners keep coming back. So I really appreciate the support, and what you can do for me is to keep supporting and keep sharing. So hope everyone has a great week, and we have another great guest coming on shortly. Thank you.